Canto Bight has been on my mind a lot, for like a multitude of reasons, and I think one reason is because I feel like it's getting slagged off a lot. Every time someone says, I hear someone say that scene was too long or that scene is pointless. It deeply wounds me because, in my opinion, that scene isn't long enough because I just want more Canto Bight. And luckily, there is a book. I don't know what I would be doing if that book didn't exist. With the stories about all these characters, and because I don't know. There's like, I was telling you the other day, we were talking about the action figure line and how it seems to be kind of like wrapping up for the Last Jedi, before the release of Solo, which is like man, I hope that's not the case, because like we still don't even have like Holdo figures, which is breaking my heart. And
No Holdo, no master, or no master codebreaker, no caregivers,
no
no
Grandma
attendants.
sisters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot. There's a ton. No
Yeah.
Vortexes. Um, no ATM-6 vehicle. There's a ton of
Mhm.
stuff that they can and should do for the Last Jedi. If
Yeah. Yeah. But like I was saying, like I want a Canto Bight playset. I want like every single creature in Canto Bight to have a figure. Yeah, like I want all that because I love this so much. But even like aside from just like the like, I don't know, parallels to, I guess, like the cantina or to Maz's castle, where like you're just getting all these like tantalizing glimpses at cool aliens. I also think that the Canto Bight scene is one of the um most thematically rich parts in a Star Wars movie ever, and I think it has some of the most interesting and challenging themes that we've seen in a Star Wars movie, and I've kind of like described them in like the show notes and to you as kind of like punk rock themes,
mm-hmm.
um, because there is like so much of that kind of pushback against high culture and stuff here, in that this is essentially a scene full of class conflict, um with, in the film we see it kind of like manifest in what like Rose is saying, and like her distaste for the people and the excess of the people here. And it also, like, that theme really permeates the stories in the book, because like many of the protagonists in the stories come from a place of like commonality, and not and they're like, it's a lot of people and creatures exploited by the rich of Canto Bight. And there's stuff about, even in the visual dictionary, it talks about like how um laws are very flexible in Canto Bight, depending on the influence and power and money and wealth of the person either being harmed or initiating something that may be considered unlawful. Um, and I think that's just like a really interesting theme to explore within the context of Star Wars. And I also think it kind of manifests in the scene where DJ is talking to Finn, and he's showing that, the ship that they stole belongs to an arms dealer, and the arms dealer is kind of playing both sides and selling to both the First Order and the Resistance. And I think that's an interesting and challenging bit to kind of put out there.
Yeah, the Canto Bight stuff rules, and people talk about like how it's like long, and it's actually not. Like if you go watch the movie again, which we've both done numerous times, like it actually goes by really quickly. I feel like it's not super long. I do love the as you put it, like the punk rock themes that are in the Canto Bight sequence, and I don't think that's like accidental or something that you're just like kind of coming up with, especially considering DJ is named after an Elvis Costello reference. You know what I mean? Like the idea that stuff is in there, I think is for sure something that's intentional. And then not only that, like I've heard people complain about Canto Bight and say that, well, it's too straightforward, not straightforward, it's too blatant with its messaging and stuff like that. It's too obvious, as if like Star Wars is not a very broad morality tale with obvious thematic or morality messaging happening all the time throughout Star Wars. Like that's part of what Star Wars is. So I have no complaints with that either. I actually love it. And on top of that, people talk about it like, well, they could just cut it out, it doesn't mean anything, it's not necessary. That's only true if you don't care about Finn's character development and Finn growing, and like everything in there is meant to teach him or kind of like help develop him as a character. Even the character of Rose, who I love, who I think is excellent. Rian Johnson's been very transparent about the fact that character was created and written to help Finn's character develop. Like that is the purpose of Rose. That's the purpose of Canto Bight. And I think she can grow beyond that as a character, but that is why she's in the movie. And that's why they go to Canto Bight in the movie. It's to develop Finn as a character. And I think it does that really well. So unless you don't, like the way his story concludes in The Last Jedi, but I personally love it. So, and I don't think it would make any sense without Canto Bight. So yeah, it's beautiful. It's goofy. It's fun. And another thing too, real quick, Ryan, about Canto Bight and Master Codebreaker. I heard somebody, I think it was on Rebel Force Radio, but I heard somebody reference the fact that Canto Bight, that sequence has kind of like Spielbergian feel to it. And I think that's absolutely true. Like, I feel like it does have this like really 80s kind of like Spielberg type movie vibe to it. In fact, I think it was in the Art of book, to bring it back there. Or maybe it was just another interview. I'm not sure, but somebody said that Ryan really wanted the movie to be very 80s and have like a very 80s feel and stuff. And I think you can totally see that in Canto Bight. And then you have Master Codebreaker, who is wearing an outfit, his white tuxedo, very, very similar to Indiana Jones in the beginning of Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, in Club Obi-Wan, even down to the red pin, the rose pin on his tuxedo. So like, to me, that's almost like, oh, Master Codebreaker's like clothing in that sequence is there to make a visual connection for the audience between that sequence and movies like Temple of Doom and like movies with that kind of vibe and stuff like that. So, which I love. And yeah, I think Canto Bight is executed really well and is super cool. That's my conclusion. It's very good. Very good stuff.
Yes, I also agree. And I do want to say on the subject of Rose and the idea of her being like a character created to, help Finn grow, because originally it was going to be Finn and Poe Dameron.
Yeah.
But that was, Ryan felt that was too boring, potentially, retracing steps from Force Awakens and like their camaraderie there, and not really taking either character into new territory, which I think separating them was such a good plan, because like we see so much growth from Poe, and we see him growing through failure, a big theme of the movie. Failure is the greatest teacher. That's not, I've heard that mentioned on many Star Wars podcasts. But yeah, I think separating them is a great idea. But we also, like with Rose, like she's I think she becomes she's like woven in to become like an essential um character in the sequel trilogy, because she has her own, she manages to still, like, despite being created as like a foil for Finn, she still manages to have her own pretty like substantial and like touching character arc herself.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's just like a testament to like the skill of Ryan Johnson and the story group and everyone, and Kelly Marie Tran's like amazing performance as well, that you know this character who wasn't really even supposed to be part of this story was just so well woven in, and like I can't imagine like Star Wars without her already. So
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think like DJ was created to help move Finn's character in a certain direction. Rose was created to do that too.
mhm.
And that's where they came from in the script, but that doesn't mean they can't exist as interesting characters and then, themselves be further developed later on too and become, I don't think Rose needs to become I think she's already a great character, an incredible character, like you were saying. And, she's excellent, but it's just, that is where she comes from and what her purpose in the story is. But she's so well written, and Kelly Marie Tran plays her so well that she kind of like ends up superseding that or growing beyond that.
Mhm.
But it's the same thing with Luke Skywalker, and so I guess I point that out to say like it's not in any way meant to diminish Rose or DJ as characters. The fact that they're in there for the specific purpose. Same with Holdo. Same with Luke Skywalker. Really, I mean, Luke is in this story not so much to advance Luke's story as he is to, I think, like advance like the story of Rey and other characters within the Resistance and well, really Rey, but you know what I mean. Like I think the focus is always on the core characters of Rey, Poe, Kylo Ren, Finn, and then characters like Rose and DJ, or even characters like Luke Skywalker and Han Solo, I think are there to how do we use them to advance the story of these characters that we are focused
Mhm.
on and whose story we are telling. So it's not a negative thing in any sense. It's just the way you have to go about it, or the way they're choosing to go about it with the sequel trilogy.
Yeah. Okay, so one last thing. We have mentioned DJ multiple times, and he's a character that through um, subsequent viewings, I'm really more and more intrigued by, and I'm super curious what direction they take this character. And I think what he means thematically in this film could be something different in the next film, or maybe his story's over and then like his impact is what it is in this film, which is I would say kind of showing Finn you know the gray area of war, and the like futility in a sense of like this just like never ending conflict. And they blow you up today, you blow them up tomorrow, um kind of I don't know, just kind of worldview.
Uh-huh.
And I think like he represents that in where his story ends in The Last Jedi. But do you think that DJ will be back in uh, episode 9?
I think possibly. I would not say yes. I think he will be back because I don't think it's necessary at all for him to be back.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think he serves his purpose well in this story. And I have a feeling episode 9 is gonna be pretty packed as it is. So like I don't think it's necessary to bring him back. But I think that there are plenty of ways they could do it and it could be good. So it's just a question of like how invested are they as storytellers? How invested is JJ in a character like DJ? But I don't think it's really necessary to bring him back. But if there's a place in the story where it makes sense. What I would not like to see with DJ is a Maz Kanata, the way Maz Kanata was used in The Last Jedi. And I don't think they would do that, but I think, I love The Last Jedi so much, but one genuine complaint I have about it is I think the use of Maz Kanata is just really bad. Like it falls flat, it doesn't make any sense, and it doesn't. I love Maz Kanata so much in The Force Awakens. I'm a huge Maz Kanata fan, and I really actively don't enjoy the way she was used in The Last Jedi. So that's an example of like, well, Maz Kanata is a character that should be in this movie, so let's find some, place for her to fit. DJ executes his purpose in The Last Jedi really well. And so if there's an appropriate place for him to kind of like factor into the story of Episode 9, then let's go there. But I am personally not in favor of, I like DJ. I like Benicio del Toro and I like the character DJ. He should be in Episode 9. I don't think he should be in Episode 9 unless there's a reason for him to be in Episode 9. And just the fact that we like him, I don't think is a very good one, personally.
Right. And so like that's kind of where I'm at. In that, like, I think his performance is incredible. I love every moment he's on screen. I love his delivery. Like, I'm not like, I don't totally love the stutter. But I think his nonverbals in the movie are like so priceless. Like, he is just so, he's so good. So like, from that perspective, like, yes, I would like to see him again because I enjoy watching him on the screen. But I think if they are going to bring him back, like, he's going to need to have an arc as a character. And I think kind of where he leaves off, and this is, obviously been his worldview for a long time, is that he's kind of your both sides are equally bad person. And what I would like to, which seems, I always kind of feel like in both, like, in our society, etc., I feel like that is like a kind of cop out to inaction. Like, not sometimes there are two sides of the same coin. Sometimes one thing is a lot more bad than the other. So he does play that, both the First Order and the Resistance are essentially the same. He kind of plays that card as in a sort of selfish way, to just, further his own gains. And I mean, I think it's pretty obvious that one of these sides is worse than the other. Even just like putting yourself in the position of someone living in this galaxy, like, you see the First Order like destroy a star system, like the Hosnian system, and completely like blow up a government with Starkiller Base. I don't know if I would say like, oh, they're pretty much the same, the First Order and the Resistance. Like, I would like to see his, if they do bring him back, maybe see his view on that expand, or something to kind of like push him one way or the other. I actually think like he's an interesting character because he could go either way, and I could see him, I would of course like to see him come around on the side of the Resistance, but I also could see him being like, well, this Resistance has no chance, and you guys have no idea what you're doing. I'm aligning myself with like Order because at least, this makes sense, and this is the way it's going to shake out anyways. So I could also see him aligning himself with the First Order, and I would like to see that. I would like to see him choose a side, I think, if he does appear in Episode 9.
Yeah, maybe. Sure. That he's got to go somewhere. If they could bring him back, he's got to develop him one way or the other.
Mm-hmm.
Although I think I kind of feel like Finn is the one to make the choice, and that's the whole point of DJ. So like
Mm.
DJ presents this like nihilistic, like both sides are the same and just do whatever's best for you kind of perspective. And then Finn actively like chooses a different route. Like that's presented to Finn as an option, and then he makes a different choice. You know what I mean? So like we could see DJ come back in episode 9 and also make a different choice, but like we've already seen Finn make the choice in reaction to DJ's worldview. So
But don't you feel like Finn's choice was like a foregone conclusion going into this movie? Like, I don't feel like there's as much of a moment as there was. I feel like he made that choice in Force Awakens.
Yeah, maybe.
It doesn't. He's not still on the fence in Last Jedi. Like, he's
Well,
not
then
like, maybe I'm gonna help out the Resistance. Like, no, he's going for it. He has a plan.
yeah, but his plan is all, well, I don't know. His plan's all about Rey. And then I think like if that's the case, then that does kind of undercut the necessity of Canto Bight, because I think the point of Canto Bight is for Finn to see that like there's a different way to live and it hurts normal people. And not only that, and so that's one reason to fight the First Order. And then I think he also sees that you have somebody like DJ who's decided like, man, I don't want to fight. Like Finn in Force Awakens, and even I think in the beginning of Last Jedi to a certain extent, is like, this is crazy. I can't be involved in this. Like I want to protect Rey. That's my goal. Even when they go to Starkiller Base in Force Awakens, like his thing, I don't even know how to shut down the shield. I just want to get Rey out of there. You know what I mean? Then he wakes up in Last Jedi and he's like, where's Rey? And he's totally gonna like ditch the Resistance, try to go somewhere the Resistance is not, hope Rey will meet him there, and then be like, we're safe, and not because like he has like, I don't know if I believe in the Resistance or not, but just because I think he's very much a character who's like, and these movies take place days apart from one another too. Like he has not like made some incredible growth between Force Awakens and Last Jedi. So I think that he's a good guy, but he doesn't necessarily want to be invested in dedicating his life to fighting the First Order. I do think that's the case with Finn. And so him going to Canto Bight, he sees like, okay, wow, people are suffering all throughout the galaxy as a result of the First Order. And then DJ shows up, and DJ is like, I think I referred to him in a text to you guys or something as like the ghost of Christmas future for Finn. Like, this is what I could become. I could become a guy who's out for myself and whose motto is don't join. And because that's what Finn is experimenting with in Force Awakens is don't join. I'm going to go off to some outer rim planet and do my own thing and not be a part of the Resistance. And I do think the choices he makes in Force Awakens are motivated by his connection to Rey. And then I think Rian Johnson explicitly tries to point out to us in the first half of The Last Jedi that those are, Rey is still his motivating factor, not the Resistance. But I think by the end of the movie, Finn is ready to do whatever he needs to do in service of the cause. And I don't think you ever see him do anything primarily in service of the cause until after Canto Bight. So,
and are you referring to like the crate scene where he is ready to sacrifice himself?
Yeah, and he even tells Poe like not only is he really willing to sacrifice himself, but then he tells Poe like we got to go help Luke. He's out there facing them down on his own. We got to help him, like he is ready to, it has nothing to do with Rey, but I don't think he ever, he never does that until then. And so I think to me, that's just what I think DJ's purpose is, and like, I think that it's totally accomplished. But again, that doesn't mean they can't bring him back and have him have his own arc or whatever. But if it's just about like, let's bring him back so we can see what side he chooses, that could still be good, but I don't think I need it because like, you get what I'm saying, right? Like,
yeah. I mean, I think it supplements the main story, but I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing because I think that is, I mean, for one, he's an interesting character. He's entertaining, just from like a film goer perspective. But also like he does kind of represent the, in a way, like the common man, even though he's got some extraordinary abilities, the person who's not entrenched in like the war. He's essentially a civilian. And I think that is also like a perspective worth having.
Yeah. And if we weren't talking Star Wars, like I more agree with DJ, honestly. Like, I'm more of a don't join. Like, it is a cycle of endless war. You know what I mean? Like, and like, I feel if it wasn't Star Wars, maybe the point here at the end of episode 9 or whenever would be, can we find a different way of dealing with this besides just building a rebellion, building an empire, and then slamming them against one another for a couple decades? You know what I mean? Like, that
Yeah.
doesn't seem to be going anywhere. And that's a complaint some people make about the sequel trilogy is like, hey, I thought we won this thing at the end of Return of the Jedi. Well, just so it could happen again. Well, guess what? That's how it works. You know what I mean? But perhaps like
Well,
DJ
that's
could
like
represent.
when the Allies won World War II and we don't have
Mhm.
wars anymore.
No, yeah, realistically, it doesn't make sense, of course. But then at the same time, it's like you say, like, well, one side's worse than the other. Yeah, one side is worse than the other. So does that mean like we just stay entrenched in a endless cycle of wars repeatedly forever and ever? I mean, in the case of human history, yes, that is what it
Yeah.
means. But that doesn't mean it's like what the goal should be, or like, you know what I mean? So somebody like DJ who says like, could we like do something besides just build armies
Mhm.
up and slam them against one another? That's not an idea I disagree with. But I don't think like ultimately episode 9 is going to be about like demilitarization. In fact, episode 7 kind of criticizes the idea of demilitarization,
Yeah.
especially if you read the supplemental material. It's like Mon Mothma wound down the armies of the Republic, and that's what allowed the First Order
Left
to
them really
rise. So I don't think it's
vulnerable.
going. I don't think it's going that way. So I think you're right. DJ would have to make a choice, but it seems like really what's more in line with his character is that he provides a different perspective and a different worldview, and I don't think it's one that's completely invalid, even though in terms of like the limited, not limited, but in terms of the broader story they're trying to tell with Star Wars, it's not really valid in that world. You know what I mean? And it's like it's presented so that Finn can make a better choice, at least in the world of Star Wars or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, you know, that's a. I don't think like there's usually not just two options either, which is another thing here. Like DJ is like, well, there's the good guys and the bad guys, but neither one of them are really good or bad or whatever. And you kind of rightfully push back on that and said like, well, hey, one's worse than the other. But then like even that argument implies there's only two options, and maybe DJ is a character that suggests there's more than two options. So you don't have to choose the one that's less bad than the other. Maybe you can choose one that's genuinely good, you know, and doesn't involve like lots of death and destruction. But again, I don't think that's Star Wars, so it's probably not where we're going.
Well, I don't know, but I also think maybe that is Star Wars now. Like that, these are themes that are being introduced, and I mean, like and that's what I think is so exciting about The Last Jedi is because it opens up so many doors, and I think like the themes, like these newly introduced themes, and we didn't even talk about like the animal liberation theme that also manifests in Last Jedi. But
Pablo Hidalgo should have named a character after like Propagandy in the visual dictionary.
Hey, that Canadian connection. But no, I think like maybe these are not themes that I mean, maybe they're not themes that Rian Johnson subscribes to. Maybe these aren't like his personal politics or something. I find that hard to believe, but but I mean, maybe this is stuff that won't be explored in episode 9, but maybe it will be explored in his trilogy. And like personally for me, like as as like a 35-year-old dude, like I like Star Wars like venturing and like dipping its toe into some of these different themes, and I don't think I don't think Star Wars needs to become like overly political or anything. I think it still needs to be accessible, and it still is like a mainstream product. But I think the fact that these stories can be told in the context of Star Wars is really appealing to me. And I think I think just as like people in a society, like there's something we can get from having these themes appear in this like fictional world. I think there's a takeaway and a level of meaning to it that I think is like wholly welcome, and it's challenging, and it like obviously leads to discussion, and I think that's a sign of like really good entertainment that just happens to be like the most mainstream thing ever,
Mm-hmm.
which I think is super super cool.
Yep, and the Last Jedi does a really good job, I think, of exploring new ideas, but not completely, um, moving away from what came before. And I think that's an unfair assessment that some people put on the movie, is that it's like totally walking away from what was Star Wars. And I think ultimately it explores some different avenues and does new things with Star Wars, but in the end, it kind of, I feel like the Last Jedi in the end embraces the, you know, the kind of classic motifs and ideas of Star Wars movies. You know what I mean? Like it's very
Mhm.
hopeful in the end. And for some reason that's getting lost for
Yeah,
some people along the way. So
man, it's like it's Star Wars is all heck. Like there's so much Star Wars in it.
mm-hmm.
And and it's funny too because I know we need to like wrap up here, but I see like a constant stream on like social media and stuff of people complaining about stuff like Marvel movies where saying like, oh, like there is some fatigue, and it's like, oh, these these new ones look cool, but they're going to be the same as the old ones, and like, or the ones that came out last year, and they can be really good, but they're not really like, it's just kind of like a status quo. And I think that in order for like a franchise to like move forward and to like remain interesting, um like you I don't know, you do have to like do things differently. You can't just keep making the same movie that came out 40 years ago over and over again, because eventually, like, even as I mean, as fans, like, we'd probably still like it, but I think eventually like the conversation and the intrigue would like slowly fade away, and
Mm-hmm.
it would just be like, oh, this is a thing that I do because I'm a fan of, and then I watch it and oh, that was cool. Here's my ranking of them in order, and then we're done. Okay, when's the next one coming?
Mm-hmm.
Kind of thing. But I feel like Last Jedi has given us like so much to chew on for the next couple of years, and I think that's really welcome and exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. I just hope they continue to work with people like Ryan Johnson, who can really walk that line and find that balance between breaking out and doing new things, and in some cases even rebuking ideas from the past, but then also holding on to enough of like really understanding. There's that quote that we pulled from the Visual Dictionary where it says it's in our bones. You know what I mean? Like it's in, there is like, I think as long as you truly love it and it's truly part of you, like Star Wars, then there's the potential there to like kind of break off in different directions and explore new things. And it's okay to test different things, and it's okay to push back on certain, to have Luke Skywalker throw that lightsaber behind him in the beginning of The Last Jedi, because he gets Star Wars, and in the end, and throughout the process, but like those motifs and those ideas and the things that are really crucial and important to Star Wars, they're there underneath it, but it's challenging and tries exciting new things, and pushes back on certain ideas, but it doesn't completely throw them away, toss them away, right? So even though Luke tosses that lightsaber out in the beginning of The Last Jedi, by the end he's there doing the heroic thing. And so it's okay that like it was a really challenging and difficult process to get from point A to point B in The Last Jedi for characters like Luke, and for audiences to a certain extent, because like you said, it's doing something new, but then it retains enough of what it needs to have. So it's an alchemy, or this balance between all those things that has to be right. But it doesn't have to be the same. It doesn't always have to be the same. You just have to find a way to make like new ideas kind of fit in with the framework in a way that feels natural and feels right. And I think, Ryan Johnson does that in The Last Jedi incredibly well. And I also think that we get that kind of with Rogue One. And then
Mhm.
potentially, I think with Ryan Johnson's new trilogy, Rogue One's a much more military, war focused Star Wars movie, but it maintains enough of the balance of all the elements that you need to feel like Star Wars. And I think, like if Ryan Johnson's new trilogy, for instance, goes a more mystical route and focuses more on like the mysticism and the Force and things like that, and much less on the military engagement and all that sort of thing.
Mhm.
If it gets the balance right, it'll still be Star Wars. It'll be doing something new and exploring it in a different way, and even pushing back on certain elements of Star Wars that have always been there. But that can work too, as long as I think as long as the creative forces behind it like kind of understand what matters in Star Wars and what the kind of bones of it are, as Ryan Johnson said. So. Mm-hmm. All right. I think we probably definitely should call it there, Ryan.
Yeah.
But that ended up being, I think, a pretty fun 3-part discussion, or enjoyable 3-part discussion there for me anyway. So we'll be back soon with more Blockade Runner podcast. I have a feeling maybe next time we record, we'll be talking maybe a little more about Solo and less about The Last Jedi. But there's still a lot to say about The Last Jedi as well. So I'm hoping to get out to the movie theater at least a handful of times here before it leaves. Although I've noticed, at least where I am, it's left the IMAX screens, and I don't even think it's playing in 3D around here anymore. So it's definitely winding down its time in the theater, but I think we'll have another probably month or so where it's playing at least a little bit.
I think we'll have it pretty accessible until next month when Black Panther comes out.
Okay, so mid-February. Yeah,
I think that will probably be the pivot point.
All right. Well, I'm itching to get back. It's been a while since I've been to the theater to see The Last Jedi, week and a half, 2 weeks. So I am itching to get back out there and hoping to do that soon. But yeah, like I said, I would expect a Solo reveal coming up here. Got to be in the next couple of weeks. So we'll definitely be back to talk about that. Until then, you can follow the podcast on Twitter at Blockade Run. And Ryan, you're on Twitter at Brawn Dwarf.
BRAWNDWARF.
Yeah, that Brawn Dwarf, brawny fellow, Brawny Dwarf. And otherwise, subscribe on iTunes, review on iTunes. That'd be cool. YouTube, subscribe. Blockade Runner podcast, and all of our stuff can be found at blockaderunnerpodcast.com.